Welcome to First Sleep Aid, calm stories to help you unwind, learn, and fall asleep. From true crime to curious facts and thoughtful ideas, always softly spoken. Subscribe now and take a deep breath. You're in good hands. So tonight we're turning our attention to a case from Germany. Frauke Liebs.
Yes, Frauke Liebs, a 21-year-old student nurse.
Disappeared back in June 2006 in Paderborn. She'd been watching a World Cup match.
Right, and what makes this case so, well, haunting, really, are the communications that happened after she vanished. Very unusual.
Exactly. So our goal here is just to, calmly walk through the timeline, look at the evidence we have.
And reflect a bit on the questions, the big unanswered questions that still surround it all, separating what we know from, well, speculation.
It's a case that really stays with you because of that initial normalcy.
An ordinary evening that just spirals into something else entirely. Those fragmented signals later on, they just deepen the mystery.
So let's start with that day, June 20th, 2006. Frauke had lunch with her mother, her flatmate too.
A pretty normal day by all accounts.
Then later she gets a text about the football match. England versus Sweden, I think.
Right, the World Cup was on. Big event.
She gets dropped off at an Irish pub, maybe around 9 p.m. Everyone said she seemed cheerful,
Just a regular night out. She was texting someone she knew, apparently.
Yeah, an acquaintance. And there's this detail about her phone battery running low. She borrowed a charged one at the pub.
Okay.
And then she gave it back before she left.
So she intended to stay connected. That seems clear.
Then around 11 p.m., Frauke leaves the pub. She's on foot.
On foot? Okay.
And she reportedly had very little money on her. Maybe €5 tops.
Which suggests she wasn't planning on going far, right? Like maybe just walking home.
Exactly. Her apartment was only about, 1.2 kilometers away? A short walk.
A walk she should have completed easily.
But she never arrived home.
And that's the moment, isn't it? When the ordinary tips over. Just not arriving.
The first point where concern must have started creeping in for her family, her flatmate.
That simple absence, it carries such weight even before anything else happens.
And that concern must have just, exploded shortly after midnight. 12:49 a.m., June 21st.
What happened then?
Her flatmate receives a text message from Frauke's phone.
Okay. Saying what?
Just, she would be home later. Something like that. Very brief.
Right. Seems maybe reassuring on the surface, perhaps. Delayed slightly.
Maybe. But here's the critical thing. Police investigations later figured out where that text was sent from.
And it wasn't Paderborn.
No. It was sent from a place called Nijmegen-Entrup.
Nijmegen-Entrup. How far is that?
It's about 40 kilometers away from Paderborn.
40 kilometers. Wow. Okay, that changes everything.
Completely. You can't walk 40 kilometers in, less than 2 hours after leaving a pub with no money?
No, absolutely not. So that first message itself is a huge anomaly. It immediately raises the question, how did she, or at least her phone, get there?
It points to significant unexplained movement, almost certainly involving a vehicle.
And likely not under her own steam, given the circumstances.
Yeah.
What did investigators make of that initially, do we know?
It must have immediately shifted their focus. This wasn't just someone late coming home.
No. This suggests something far more complex had already happened.
And then things get even stranger. That wasn't the last contact.
Right, her phone stayed active for almost a week after that first text, didn't it?
For 6 days. Imagine that for her family and friends. That period must have been absolute torture.
A week of contact.
Yeah.
But not normal contact.
No. Several short phone calls were made from her phone. To family, to friends.
Calls, not just texts. What were they like?
Very strange. Sometimes it was Frauke's voice, apparently. Other times, just silence. Or static.
Silence or static. That's incredibly unsettling.
And when her voice was heard, people who knew her said she sounded off, vague, almost robotic, some described it.
Robotic, detached, not like herself.
Not at all. She wouldn't, or maybe couldn't, give any clear information about where she was or what was happening.
Just vague reassurances, perhaps?
Sort of. There was this one call with her brother. It's particularly chilling.
What happened in that call?
He directly asked her, are you being held against your will?
Wow, he asked her that straight out.
Yeah. And her first response was yes.
She said yes.
For a moment. Then almost immediately she said no.
A yes, then a no.
Yeah.
Ambiguous doesn't even cover it. Confusing, frightening.
And then she just kept repeating this phrase, I'm coming home, over and over. I'm coming home.
I'm coming home. And that was it.
That was the last time anyone ever heard her voice. that call.
That fleeting yes, though,
Hmm.
it just hangs there, doesn't it? It suggests coercion, perhaps speaking under duress.
It's hard not to think that. The immediate retraction, the repetitive phrase. It sounds like someone maybe being prompted or terrified.
You can only guess at the psychological state she must have been in, and the agony for her brother hearing that mix of hope and sheer terror.
And all through this week, the police were, of course, trying to trace these calls.
Were they able to pinpoint locations?
They could pinpoint the area the signal was coming from, and with each call, it was different.
Different locations. Within what sort of area?
Within the sort of wider Huckster-Paderborn region, so not just one place, it showed movement.
Movement. So whoever had her, assuming she was being held, was likely moving her around.
That became the investigators' strong suspicion. That she was being held, and the calls, the movement, it was all potentially designed to mislead them.
To create a confusing trail. To make it seem like she was somehow still okay, still mobile, maybe delay a full-scale search in one specific place.
Possibly. It's a very calculated pattern, if you think about it that way. Using her own phone against the investigation.
The psychological impact on her loved ones, receiving those calls, knowing the phone was moving, but not knowing where she was or if she was safe.
Yeah.
It's unimaginable.
And then, after that last call with her brother, the phone went silent permanently.
The contact just stopped, leaving. Nothing.
Just silence. And agonizing uncertainty that stretched on for months.
Until October.
Yes. October 4th, 2006, more than 3 months after she disappeared.
What happened on that day?
A hunter was in a forested area near Lichtenau, which is, again, maybe 20 kilometers or so from Paderborn.
Okay, another location within that broader region.
And he discovered skeletal remains.
Oh, no.
Dental records later confirmed it. It was Frauke.
So, after all that time, the calls, the hope, this is how it ended. Finding her remains in a forest.
Yes. The location itself was apparently quite remote. Difficult to access. Quiet.
Suggesting perhaps that whoever left her there knew the area well. Somewhere secluded.
That's certainly a possibility investigators considered. It wasn't a place someone would likely stumble upon easily.
Were they able to determine what happened to her, the cause of death?
Sadly, no. Her clothes were apparently still with her body.
Okay.
But because of the time that had passed, the decomposition was too advanced.
Ah. So forensics couldn't establish a cause of death?
No, they couldn't determine if she'd suffered physical violence or sexual violence or exactly how she died.
That's another layer of frustration, isn't it? Not having that crucial piece of information.
And adding to that, there were no signs that the specific spot where she was found had been searched previously.
So she could have been there for quite some time, undiscovered.
It seems likely. Months of uncertainty ending with this tragic discovery, but still without definitive answers about her final moments.
The sheer emotional weight of that, finding her after so long, but still facing so many unknowns, it's profound.
It brings us to trying to piece together what might have happened. The theories.
Right. Given the evidence, particularly the calls and the movement, what are the main lines of thought?
Well, the most widely held theory, I think, is abduction and captivity.
Based on the controlled nature of those communications.
Exactly. The calls seeming staged, the movement, that initial text from so far away, it all points towards someone controlling the situation, controlling Frauke.
And potentially using the phone to deliberately mislead, maybe to buy time or create confusion.
Right. And you have to consider the psychological pressure she might have been under during those calls. That brief yes hints at it.
A terrifying possibility. What other theories are considered?
Another one revolves around the idea that perhaps she knew her abductor.
Knew them. What's the reasoning there?
Well, things like the absence of any ransom demand. And the fact that there was communication, however strange. Some think it might suggest an initial encounter that wasn't overtly threatening, maybe someone she trusted, that then went terribly wrong.
So she might have left willingly with someone initially.
It's a possibility some consider. And the geographical pattern of the calls, sticking within that Huckster-Paderborn rural area, could suggest the person involved had familiarity with those locations, not just random driving.
That makes sense. Familiarity with the area seems key, both for the calls and for where she was eventually found.
Then there's a third theory, or maybe more accurately, a point of speculation that emerged later.
Ah, you mean the potential connection to the horror house of Huckster?
Yes. That case came to light years later, in 2016, I believe, and geographically, there was some overlap.
Overlap between the locations linked to that couple in Huckster and the areas where Frauke's phone was traced.
Exactly. And given the themes of manipulation and control in the Huckster case, people naturally wondered if there could be a link.
It's an understandable question to ask, given the proximity and nature of the crimes. But what did the police say?
Officially, police have stated there's no concrete evidence linking Frauke Liebs' case to the huckster couple.
Right. So it remains speculation, fueled by the geographical and psychological parallels, but not proven.
Precisely. It's important to keep that distinction clear. It's a theory some observers discuss, but not something established by the investigation.
So we had these theories. Abduction by a stranger, abduction by acquaintance, or the speculative huckster link, but none provide definitive answers.
No. And that leaves us with these fundamental nagging questions, just hanging there.
Like, why was that very first SMS sent from Nijhem and Trupp? What was the significance of that location, 40 kilometers away?
Was she deliberately moved around during that week just to confuse the investigation? Was that the primary purpose of the calls?
Did she know the person or people responsible? Or was it a crime of opportunity by a stranger after she left the pub?
Why did the call stop so abruptly after that conversation with her brother? What changed?
And how did her body end up in that remote forest spot, remaining hidden for over 3 months?
These questions, they just resonate, don't they? There's a real lack of closure.
A profound lack of closure. They represent the voids in the narrative, the pieces that just don't fit neatly together.
The Frauke Liebs case really is a tragedy that hasn't faded, certainly not in Germany. Her family is still searching for answers.
Understandably so. It's a case defined almost entirely by those strange, cryptic messages, and then just silence.
That final message, "I'm coming home," knowing she never did, it's incredibly poignant.
It highlights the cruelty, perhaps, of those communications. A false hope offered in the midst of terror.
So we're left to consider the weight of it all. These unanswered questions, how they linger, not just for the family, but for a community, for anyone who learns about the case.
Yeah, what does it truly mean when a voice, heard so briefly and strangely, just vanishes into silence, leaving behind this echo of uncertainty, these questions that might never be answered? It's a heavy thought to end on.